This was the most newsworthy and also the most embarrassing week in AEW history. 1 week ago, we were coming off an excellent Clash at the Castle pay-per-view. We had NXT Worlds Collide, which got almost completely overshadowed in the noise of everything that ended up happening. And then we had AEW All Out, which has become basically like their WrestleMania every year. I think if you were to classify these 4 pay-per-views that they have every year, Double or Nothing is a big show too, but I think All Out, if you had to say which one is sort of like their WrestleMania, that would be All Out in Chicago. Now last year we had the in-ring debut of CM Punk. We had the debut of Bryan Danielson. We had the debut of Adam Cole. We had some great matches on the show. I think, well, that might have been where we had the cage match between the Bucks and the Lucha Bros, if I'm remembering. So it's a great night for AEW. Very positive night. Everybody was talking about them. It was largely positive. It's amazing how much of a difference a year can make. 1 year after CM Punk arrived, he could very well be on his way out the door. He walked out there at the first dance in Chicago a hero. And now he walks out as the villain. We got our heel turn, but it wasn't the heel turn that we were expecting. 15 matches and 5 hours later, the new AEW World Champion, who should have been on top of the world, right? Went through rehab for a terribly painful injury. He broke his, and this was a severe break. Came back from the broken foot. He's in the main event of this pay-per-view in his hometown of Chicago. His dog is there. His dog is in the back. He's the new world champion. He sits down at the post-show scrum right next to his boss, and he decided now would be a good time to go on a rant about Colt Cabana and the EVPs of this company. He went scorched earth on all of them. Nobody was talking about the return of MJF when this was over. It was all about CM Punk. And it was designed that way. He walked into that room with an agenda. He walked into that room like a ticking time bomb. People talk about the pipe bomb. This wasn't a pipe bomb. This was a time bomb waiting to explode. Nobody brought up the name Colt Cabana or Scott Colton. He went into that room. He spotted Nick Hausman of WrestleZone. He knew that Nick and Colt had a friendship. They had done improv together many years ago. He figured they were still friends. And who knows, and maybe he was one of the media people that was stooging him off and spreading lies about him. So he honed in on Nick Hausman. And when Nick told him, in fact, that I'm not friends anymore with Cabana, we don't see eye to eye, we haven't been friends in a while, Punk said, "Oh, you blew my spot." And he went on his rant anyway. And he talked about lawsuits, he talked about emails, Colt sharing a checking account with his mother, EVPs who couldn't manage a fucking target, spreading lies about him and talking behind his back about stuff they know nothing about, leaking stuff to the media. He went off on the empty-headed fucking dumb fuck, Hangman Adam Page, going out on national television in May and going into business for himself. And how people like him haven't done a damn thing in the wrestling business. He says this about a former AEW World Champion, who, at last year's Full Gear pay-per-view in the main event with Kenny Omega, drew more on pay-per-view than CM Punk just did with Jon Moxley in the main event of All Out. He was lashing out because he felt lies were being spread about him, getting Colt Cabana fired. He was lashing out because Adam Page, in a fan Q&A a few months ago, said that he doesn't need to take advice from veterans in the company like Sting and CM Punk. He helped build this company with his friends. He's been a world champion already. He'll listen to what they have to say, but he doesn't necessarily use other people's advice. Which admittedly is a pretty stupid thing to say. Especially when you have a wealth of experience behind the scenes in that company, even if that's the way you feel. That is a pretty stupid thing to say. But what should have been a positive night for AEW turned into their biggest star burying the entire promotion that he now represents as champion, or did. All while Tony Khan sat not 5 feet away making funny faces, apparently powerless to do anything about it. Apparently there was nothing he could do. It is not a work, although that is not going to stop people from thinking that it is. Everything is a work to these people. These are the people who still believe that Cody Rhodes leaving AEW was a work. Part of some nefarious plot, I guess, to infiltrate WWE and take it down from the inside. He's a mole on the inside of the company. I guess after Cody wins the WWE title next year, he'll show up on Dynamite and have Jon Moxley bleed all over the belt. It is not a work. It is a disgrace. What happened last Sunday was a disgrace. Long before CM Punk went back to his dressing room and all hell broke loose. That only made things worse. It was already a disgrace. We just watched CM Punk win the AEW World title. And we watched the Elite become the first ever Trios Tag Team Champions. Tony Khan waited months to debut these belts, specifically waiting so that Kenny Omega could come back and he and the Bucks could take those titles. We saw this happen on the pay-per-view, and by Wednesday, it's like it never even happened. It's like that little mind racing device from Men in Black. There are people who paid $50 to watch those two matches on that show, and on Dynamite, they completely undid everything that happened. They never even mentioned the name CM Punk or Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks. So not only did they take the titles away from them and announce plans to crown new champions, but if you're not somebody who follows along with every little thing that happens and you're on social media and you're going to the dirt sheets or the wrestling news websites or what have you, you would have absolutely no idea what's going on. None. They took Punk and the Elite out of the intro to the show. It's like they erased them from history. All because a fight broke out in the back while the media scrum was still in progress. Tony Khan was sitting with Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland. You have a security guy flying out of the room because something is happening backstage. These two guys are out there. They're trying to talk about their fantastic match with the Acclaimed. Something else that was overshadowed by all of this nonsense was we got a great tag team championship match. Tony Khan didn't know what was happening until after it was over, and Chris Jericho could be seen when he was leaving the scrum telling him, hey, some shit went down. Tony was sitting there raving about WWE not being nice to him because they booked 2 shows last weekend, his weekend, Labor Day weekend, and how now he knows how Jim Crockett felt and he's not going to sit back and take this shit anymore. He's saying this at the exact same moment that his locker room, mere feet away, is falling apart. You know, there have been lots of stories about what happened from the Punk camp, stories from the Elite camp, and somewhere in the middle lies the truth. Nobody is talking because this is now a legal matter. I hope somebody tells the judge that it's all just the work. I'd hate for him or her not to be in on it. After all, it's a work. One version of the story had the Young Bucks kicking the door down or kicking the door in to Punk's locker room to confront him, which even the Punk side now denies. They didn't kick the door down. They just got into the room very quickly. You know, I wonder if they did kick the door down, did they slap their legs before they kicked the door down? Because if they did, that should have given CM Punk a heads up before they barged in. So they either came in with AEW's chief legal officer or she was already in the room. But the belief is that she was there. She was present for all of this. She was a witness to all of this. So it would not have been very bright of the Bucks to be kicking any doors in or throwing punches once they got inside if they knew that she was there. Then again, I just talked last week about the cops watching the Velveteen Dream in his car snorting cocaine right in front of the cops. There are a lot of really stupid people in this world, so anything's possible. The belief is that Punk threw the first punch, several punches in fact, at Matt Jackson. That seems to be one detail from these stories that's pretty consistent, is that Punk threw the first punch. And that becomes key, because whether he did or not, you know, they're going to investigate that. Who instigated this? Who threw the first punch? Who's the first person who got physical? Yes, the Bucks maybe went to go confront him because he told people in the presser that, you know, if you got a problem with me, then come talk to me. So yes, they went to his locker room, but who got physical first? Who threw the first punch? That's going to be a key detail in all this, and that's what the investigation is for. They've hired an independent firm to investigate exactly what the hell happened in that room. They're going to be taping video interviews, if they haven't already, with everybody who was present. Punk's friend, Ace Steel. And by the way, MJF is apparently one of those names who witnessed the entire thing. But Punk's friend Ace Steel, he was there, as was Steel's wife, who had a broken foot. Maybe it was contagious and she caught it from Punk. But she was said to be there taking care of Punk's dog Larry, who he brought to the show with him since they were in Chicago. Steel got involved in the fight, the husband, not the wife, and allegedly threw a chair that hit Nick Jackson in the eye. We don't know if he was just protecting his friend, if he was protecting his wife, or both, or he just lost his cool. But he threw a chair, and then later is said to have bit Kenny Omega on the arm and pulled his hair. I laugh at the fact that we had a dog in the room, but it's not the dog who bit this man on the arm, it was another human being. Other versions of this, and by the way, on that detail about him biting Omega, it may have been because he thought Omega was trying to choke him or put him in a crossface, whatever his warped logic is in biting Kenny Omega. Other versions of this have Omega not fighting anyone, but trying to get Larry the dog out of the room so that he wouldn't get hurt. If Hangman had not already left the building, guarantee you he would have been suspended too. We wouldn't have seen him on TV this week, because I am sure that he would have marched right in there with Omega and the Bucks. He was eviscerated every bit as badly, if not worse, during that media scrum than Omega and the Bucks. So for his own sake, he's lucky that he had already left the building. Everybody who was there is said to have been suspended, which would include Punk, Steel, Omega, the Bucks, Pat Buck, no relation, Christopher Daniels, Brandon Cutler, and Michael Nakazawa. And that is not unusual given the circumstances to suspend everybody who was there. Not because they're all necessarily guilty of anything, but you suspend them or you send them home and then you investigate things. And if they're cleared of any wrongdoing, then you bring them back. It's possible people like Daniels and Pat Buck were just trying to break things up. I would hope that's the case, given that they are in producer positions or executive type positions behind the scenes in that company. They should know better than to get involved unless they were just trying to break this stuff up. What we know is that Punk suffered a torn triceps. Not during the brawl, but he suffered it 5 minutes into his match with Jon Moxley. This is according to The Observer. Not AEW, because AEW hasn't said a word officially about any of this. All of this information is coming second and third hand. AEW is tight-lipped. They're saying nothing about any of this, about the fight, about any possible suspensions, about a Punk injury. They have said nothing. But the injury happened on the tope out to the floor. And if you go back, you could see Punk favoring his arm or his elbow for the rest of the match. He's already had surgery, supposedly, and is looking at an even longer layoff than the one he just came back from the broken foot. 6 months at a minimum. Could be as long as 9 months. That gives AEW some cover now. Maybe in their mind, cooler heads prevail. Punk goes away for 9 months, things die down, he comes back, makes amends. I think that would be terrible. Just because he's hurt and he is off television does not mean that he still should not face some kind of punishment for what he did. Otherwise, what kind of message does that send? Which begs the question, what does Tony Khan do? Suspensions were a given here. You can't have Eddie Kingston suspended for a lot less, which he was a few weeks ago. He got suspended for a lot less than what happened here. You can't suspend him and not at the very least suspend the people involved here. Can't do that. You can't suspend Eddie Kingston for pie-facing somebody and then 2 weeks later have a fucking brawl-for-all backstage and not suspend anybody for it. So, at the very least, suspensions had to come out of this. But this is going to be the greatest test of Tony Khan as a leader in the 3+ years of AEW's existence. This is going to show what kind of leader he truly is. This will be the most important decision that he has ever made. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that, because the decision he makes here could have implications on whether or not CM Punk, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks are even back in AEW. And I think Omega will be. I'm thinking more in terms of the Bucks and even more in terms of CM Punk. This is going to be the most important decision that Tony Khan makes. He's not going to do anything until the investigation is complete. That could take weeks. And it doesn't mean we'll ever know the results because they're keeping all of this internal, although if anybody gets fired, then, we'll know. There could be lawsuits out of this. This could get very, very ugly. If the things about Ace Steel are true, then he cannot be there anymore. He's got to go. You throw a chair at someone's head, let alone one of the EVPs of the company, and you bite somebody. You throw a chair at one EVP, and you bite another EVP. You're a producer for this company. You're supposed to be the person who de-escalates the situation like this, not adds to it. If this is true, then he's got to go. He'll be the first one to fall. Then there's CM Punk. Now it becomes a little bit harder to figure out what do you do here. Although I don't think it should be hard at all. He's the one who got this whole shitstorm started. I don't care if everything he said in that press conference could be 100% true, and we don't know that it is. Even if it was 100% true and the Bucks were being these back-channeling, sniveling little shits behind the scenes, spreading lies and rumors about the guy, and you just want to punch them right in the face, right? All of that could be true. It doesn't matter. He's the one who got this whole shitstorm started. There is a time and a place for everything. This was neither the time nor the place. Even before the first punch was thrown, he should have been gone. Last Sunday should be the final time we see CM Punk in an AEW ring. I mean, at the very least, it should be the final time we see him having anything to do with the World Championship. This guy's made of fucking glass. But that should be the final time we see him in an AEW ring. I don't see how Tony Khan can keep him or Ace Steel around after what happened here. The heat on them is said to be off the charts, especially on Ace Steel, but on Punk too. What Punk did was completely embarrassing. And at this point, he's more of a liability, I think, to this company than anything else. There's also little use keeping him around if he's going to spend most of the time he has left on his deal rehabbing from injuries. Now, I think he's done a lot of good, business-wise, for AEW since he came in. Tony Khan made that very clear. What was it, the Double or Nothing scrum? Somebody asked about Eric Bischoff's comments about Punk, and that's when Tony flipped out, and he went into this passionate defense of CM Punk and how much he's meant to their pay-per-view buys and television ratings and all these different things, all these business metrics. So he's definitely done good for the company in a lot of ways. He was the number one guy that Tony Khan had on his wish list when he started AEW. He wanted Punk more than anybody else. So I'm sure that it is a very hard pill for him to swallow, the idea that he might now have to get rid of this guy. But I think it makes him look like a total lightweight if he does not take action after what this guy did last Sunday. Make an example out of him and make it very clear that this type of shit is not going to be tolerated. Whether you are the biggest star in the company or you are curtain jerking on Dark Elevation, it should not matter. He showed a total disregard for the president of the company. He sat there popping off the way he did. He kept cutting off Tony like he was some jabroni. Punk should not be back. The only question in my mind is when to do it. Because the guy did suffer an injury on the job. He finished the match, but he suffered a serious injury. He may have already undergone surgery. Maybe wait until he's more healed up, and then the two sides quietly part ways, if Tony Khan feels that he owes him that much. I don't think he owes him shit. But if that's how he feels, maybe that's the more diplomatic way to go about doing it. And we'll know pretty quickly in the next several weeks how their ratings look without CM Punk. If they stay the same, if they decline. That could have an effect on his thinking when it comes to those TV rights negotiations, which are coming up next year. Oh, wait a minute. Our ratings have really dipped since Punk has been off TV. Maybe I want to keep this guy around. I would cut bait. I don't think he's worth the headaches. Would Tony Khan want to lose his biggest star to WWE? No, of course not. So I understand why he probably is not going to fire CM Punk. Punk would absolutely go back to WWE under the right circumstances. And if you don't think so, go back and read the ESPN interview that he did after he debuted for AEW, where he admitted, in his own words, he admitted that he had discussions with WWE about possibly working together, about a possible comeback, but he said they played games. He said, the first thing I said to them when we got back together in these discussions, don't play games. And what did they do? They played games. Some things never change. So the question isn't, would CM Punk go back to WWE? The answer is yes, CM Punk would go back to WWE. But would Triple H want him? I don't think that he would be rushing to have any conversations with Mr. Brooks. I'm sure he wasn't the guy's biggest fan to begin with. We know what CM Punk thinks of Triple H. But now Triple H, he sees this. Why would he want to bring back a disgruntled former talent who is 8 years older and has now suffered back-to-back injuries requiring surgery and long layoffs? Who has no qualms about going out publicly and eviscerating his coworkers and embarrassing the president of the company. And this also ties in with the Elite, by the way. When we're talking about would Triple H bring in CM Punk, if Punk and the Elite have beef, and this is not just going to go away, he said it as much in the scrum, we're beyond apologies. So I don't even think that if Tony Khan were to get these guys in a room after all of this and say, okay, now you guys hash out your differences, based on what Punk said, it sounds like we're way beyond that. If there are irreparable issues between these four men, if you want to throw Omega in there, and Triple H thinks that he might have a shot at signing any of these guys, like the Bucks, I think he is way more likely to bring in the Elite than he is CM Punk. And on that subject, there are now rumors. It's funny how this comes out after all this. And that's all that's all they are right now, are rumors. That Matt and Nick Jackson have sent feelers to WWE that they would be interested in coming into the company when their deals are up, which would not be until 2024. So even if there's any truth to this at all, and the Bucks are interested in going to WWE, it's not as if it's anything that's going to be able to happen anytime soon. Now, this could just be a negotiating tactic for them to get more money out of AEW when their deals come due. I think it would be business malpractice for them not to. It's what Randy Orton did. Randy Orton did the exact same thing. There were rumors that Randy Orton might be interested in jumping ship and talking to Tony Khan. WWE swooped in there. They gave him a sweetheart deal to re-sign with the company, which he did because he never had any desire. He never had any thought in his head that, you know what, maybe I will jump over to AEW. He did it to get more money because as a businessman, that is what you do. So it could just be that the Bucks are doing the same thing. Or, and I tend to fall more in this camp too, not that I don't think that's true, but it could be this is leaking now as a message to Tony Khan, who has not yet figured out what disciplinary action he is going to take against all of these people. It could be a message to Tony Khan. If you are even thinking about firing us, if you are even thinking about stripping us of our EVP status, think again. Because we would not have any problem going over to the other side. They were very complimentary of Triple H when he first tried to sign them. They had nothing but positive things to say about Triple H. Ultimately, they decided that it wasn't a good fit for them, and they helped start up AEW. Cody went back to WWE. I don't have any doubt the Bucks would be open to going there. They could work with the New Day. They could work with the Usos. Right? They'd be a big addition to that tag team division. And Triple H would love to have them. And if they did leave, AEW would survive. AEW is not going to shrivel up and die because the Young Bucks might leave. Cody left. You could argue in some ways Cody left and all this behind-the-scenes nonsense started, but they've survived. They survived that. They would survive this. I don't think the Young Bucks leaving would be a death blow. It would hurt. There's no doubt about it that it would hurt. They helped build this company from the ground up. BTE every week on YouTube does hundreds of thousands of views. AEW would be losing that social media presence as well. If Omega wanted to leave, same thing. It would hurt. He's involved in other aspects of the company too, like the video game. It would hurt, but it would not kill them because you look at the talent roster that Tony Khan has assembled. There is no reason that they cannot absorb a loss like that and use it as a chance to build new talent up to take their spots. They got plenty of talent that are chomping at the bit, believe me, to take their spots, who probably aren't very happy about the amount of television time that they're getting at the moment. There are plenty of people on that roster who Tony Khan could slide in there and try to build up. But the Bucks are not blameless in this mess either. Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks should be stripped of more than just their trios titles. It was never a smart idea to give EVP titles to active talent. You had to know that it would cause drama at some point. It's kind of like the idea, honestly, of Triple H right now, not only being the head of creative in WWE, but being the head of talent relations. It's a weird conflict. I can't see that going on in the long term. I just think if I worked in that company, that would be a little weird. If I had an issue creatively, or I have any kind of issue, now I want to go to, it's like having the head of HR as your boss. It just doesn't work. Having active talent as EVPs in the company doesn't seem like a very bright idea. And you had to know that it would cause drama at some point. I would strip them of those titles as well. They should have known better than to inflame the situation by barging into the guy's locker room, even if he said, hey, come talk to me if you have a problem, whatever. Given the state of mind that he was in, they should have known better. You are EVPs. You are supposed to be held to a higher standard and have a better sense than what they showed last weekend. All that did was make a bad situation even worse. If the Bucks are leaking false stories about Punk or other people to the dirt sheets, then even more of a reason to strip them, although that becomes harder to prove. How are you going to prove that? All right, that becomes a lot harder. And I should say, we don't know that they have been leaking false information. I saw Meltzer and Alvarez say the Bucks never leaked anything about the whole Colt Cabana situation to us. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful, he said the same thing. I never talked to them about Colt Cabana. Never came up. So did Punk have it wrong? Was it someone else? We don't know. Here's a wild idea. Maybe, just maybe, he should have confronted them about it earlier. I don't even mean that day. I just mean confront them about it earlier, because this is not a new thing. I mean, this stuff has been going around for a few months now. Confront them about it earlier in a more civilized way and say, hey, are you guys saying these things about me? Do you actually believe this stuff? Because I don't know where it's coming from, but it's not true. I know he's your boy. I know you guys are tight. But I don't give a shit where he works or what he does. I never went to Tony. I never asked Tony Khan to do anything. I guarantee you all of this could have been avoided had the Bucks gone to Punk first, or if Punk went to them first when these stories first started coming out. 95% of the time these things happen because people do not talk to each other. There is a lack of communication on both sides. This all could have been avoided. If they acted like adults, this all could have been avoided. Tony Khan, he bears responsibility for this as well. The minute that CM Punk started shitting on the EVPs of his company last Sunday, he should have shut him down. And when Hangman Page made that comment on TV in the lead up to Double or Nothing, he should have talked to him then about it and dealt with the issue then. Or if Punk had a problem with it, he should have gone to Tony and say, hey, did you tell him to say that? What the hell is this? And when Tony Khan said, no, I had no idea, the first thing he should have done was go to Hangman, sit him down and say, what the hell was that about? He didn't do that. Now it's too late. You're not going to go back and retroactively punish the guy for what he did three or 4 months ago. So now it's too late, and you see the end result. They let the wound fester, and eventually it gets infected. Here we are. The problem is he tried to be their friend. Tony Khan has tried to be friends to all of these people, and the problem is he needs to be less of a friend and more of a leader. The man is running a $100 million business, not a fucking daycare center. 1 year ago this week, Mick Foley went on Facebook and he posted a video claiming that WWE was no longer the place for young talent to aspire to be. That they could trust AEW more than WWE to give them the opportunity to grow and succeed. That it used to be WWE, but they can no longer be trusted to do that. With all of this dysfunction behind the scenes, and with the creative change at the top in WWE, here we are 1 year later. I think a lot of that young talent may be starting to see things a little bit differently now.